Alderman Rhodey, you can unmute yourself and begin the meeting.
Okay, having quorum present, well, I guess we need to take a quorum call. The HUD committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. And Chairman Rhodey.
Present.
6 present, you have quorum.
Okay, we will begin the meeting today with excused older people. And Alderwoman Boyd has emailed me, asked to be excused, as has Alderman Kodor evidently had contacted our colleague from the 16th and said that he's running a little late. Approval of the minutes. Chair will entertain a motion for the approval of our minutes from our January 13th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Chairman Rhodey.
Aye.
6 aye votes.
Okay, let the record show that the minutes were approved. We have, I'm not sure how lengthy it is, but we only have one board bill. We have a discussion today. I'm not sure how lengthy it is, but we only have one board bill that I presume will not be terribly controversial. So why don't we go ahead and take the board bill up, and then that'll give us plenty of time to kind of unbundle the presentation from SLCDC today, which I think will be kind of important for everyone to digest. So at this point, we'll recognize Alderwoman Davis for board bill number 217.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board Bill 217 is representing a development plan for property at 3601 through 09 Lindell. That's at the corner of Grand and Lindell. It is known to most people as Jesuit Hall, that sits right there on the corner. That building, the people who are living there currently will be moving to a new facility. And so that building would have been sitting there vacant. We have a developer who is very interested in making this possible to have some additional new units there. And we have representatives here. Fernando Cepeda is the owner, and I believe Adolphus Pruitt is also with him and giving some discussion about this project. The acquisition cost on this is $6.7 million, and the renovation construction cost is $58.4 million. As we look at this project, it's really interesting because having a prime piece of property like that to be developed right away is really good. It would have been pretty bad if it had sat there vacant and not had use. In our first phase on this renovation, we'll have 130 apartments and there'll be commercial on the first floor because you definitely need it there to fit in with everything else that's going on. And also a 132 space garage just to the west of the building there. There's anticipated to have a phase 2 and the construction on that, which is a new construction, will be 187 apartments, commercial on the first floor, and also having 190 space garage to the north of the new construction. So what we're doing now is looking at tax abatement. And I do know that it went through our normal financing process and was scored. And I think one of the things we'll see is this is really going to benefit the city and the school district as far as having this additional revenue available to them. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, is turn it over to the owner first, so he can just give us a brief overview, and then we'll go on to the financing, if you don't mind.
Sure. I was remiss in reading this. Our clerk has advised us that advised me that I should be reading this at each meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
After the presentation of a bill at any public hearing, the proponents and opponents shall be heard. Alternatively, all persons who wish to testify at the public hearing shall sign a list, which shall be made available by the chairman of the committee at least 1/2 hour before the announced time of the hearing. The initial presentation of any witness shall be no longer than 5 minutes, except with the permission of the committee chairman, but any witness may respond to questions by members of the committee for an additional period of time to be determined by the committee chairman, and any witness may submit written testimony to the committee at any time prior to the conclusion of the hearing on the bill. So we have had a sign-up list, and there was only 2 people signed up on it, and I believe the Alderwoman from the 19th has already referenced them. So Alderwoman, why don't you go ahead and proceed, and then after your proponents have spoken, the sponsors of the development have spoken, and we'll bring up someone from SLDC to go through the financing.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask that the owner speaks first, Mr. Cepeda. Do you need to unmute?
Hello, could you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time first. We're very excited about this project, especially being such a historic building and the potential impact that it will have here on North Grand and Lindell. We've been working diligently to get this project off the ground, and we've already very, very far ahead in the sense of doing our due diligence, having inspections and whatnot. So we've already have financing in place for the project. So we're pretty much very, very far along, and like I said before, we're just very excited about the potential impact to that corridor and meeting the needs of the neighborhood and the support of the neighborhood. Mr. Pruitt has some additionals.
No, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm excited about my partnership with Fernando and this particular project. But one of the unique things that I really like about it is the fact that we are assisting Jesuit Hall, the Jesuit Order, in a relocation that is somewhat significant for the area. Right now, half of the building is empty. There are about 80 residents that are left. And in order to make sure that they have a smooth transition, we've not only agreed to purchase the building, to give them some cash to help with the construction of their new facility, but we've also negotiated and allowed them to stay in the building for the next 18 months for $1 in order to make sure that they have a place to stay until their building is done. And then immediately after they leave, we prepare to move in and start construction and have the building occupied fairly soon. And the second part of it is just being able to add some new construction to the area and bring up the density in Grand Center is also, we think, is a plus. So that piece to the west of the building, we're excited about the opportunity to build a 14-story tower that has the same mass and as the existing facility, and bring some new parking to the area. So I think it's going to be an exciting project. It was the old Melbourne Hotel, and we're going to rename the project to Melbourne and bring back some of the features that was a part of that hotel when it first opened.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I want to just add something to that because he talked about some of the history. In that particular area, one of the things that has taken place is knowing that we do need more housing in the area, and this will complement the current construction that is going on Olive Boulevard between Vandevender and Spring. So that development is new units, it's housing, condos, and you'll be hearing something from that development. It is expanding to also put in some affordable apartments as well. So they're complementing each other in an area that will definitely bring more value to the city with more people. And that's been my goal for years, is to try to grow the population in the city. And I accomplished it the last 10 years on the census, and I pray that I've done the same thing this current 10-year period. But it's good to see the fact that when you have buildings like this, that also brings jobs because it requires management for it, and the commercial spaces will bring jobs too. So I'd like to end and ask that we conduct a financial overview.
Great. Thank you, Alderwoman. Who at SLDC is going to review the project with us today? Is it?
I will, Chairman Rhodey. This is John.
Okay, John, do you want to go ahead and begin screen share? And
Yes. So the project, as has been mentioned, is currently owned by, I guess it'd be either SLU or the Catholic Church, but either way, it's a tax exempt property, so it's not generating any property tax today, which helps contribute quite a bit to the fact that it's going to be generating, even with this 95% tax abatement, a fair amount of new revenue to the school district, even during the first 10 years, and to the city. So the over 10 years, the benefit over the existing base to the city is going to be $1.6 million and $240,000 to the school district. Over a 20-year span, that's $4.7 million to the city and $5.5 million to the school district. The project also exceeds the neighborhood average by $767,000 to the city and $114,000 to the school district over the first 10 years, and by $3.6 million to the city over 20 years and $4.2 million to the school district. The value of the incentive, the tax abatement over in present value terms over the 10 years is $5.9 million, which is about 7.4% of the total project cost. The rate of return to the developer is 5.9% with the incentive. So it passes muster as far as the but-for test is concerned. And I'm happy to try and answer any questions. As you can see, it gets 5 out of 5 on the score.
okay. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a few questions. Now, so there's a new housing facility being built somewhere else. Is that correct? Maybe I asked the sponsor.
Oh, I mentioned another development that's being done by a different developer. And I just wanted to mention that to show how this will complement what is already going on, to show that we do need housing because it's been identified already.
I thought I heard something about the students being relocated until another building was built.
Oh, you're talking about the residency that is currently in Jesuit Hall. That is where the retired priests and teachers of the Jesuits
Okay.
currently live.
Okay. Pruitt, just so that I'm clear, is this a partnership with the NAACP or is this a personal partnership with Pruitt?
Impersonal.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what the rents will be upon completion? The developer?
It close to a little bit more than there's the 2 bedrooms, a little bit more than like 1100. Let me pull that up. The average across is about 1,500 a month.
And they're going to be 1 and 2 bedrooms or all 2 bedrooms?
Primarily 1 bedrooms. There are a handful of 2s.
So a 2 bedroom. So let's start over. So a 1 bedroom would average how much per month?
It's
About
1,400. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
and so
looking
then 1,700 for a 2 bedroom.
at- correct.
Roughly.
Okay, Jonathan. So since this was tax abated, I didn't know we can do tax abatement for a building that's not actually being used for educational purposes and that has residential units. So,
Well, it's tax exempt as opposed
well,
to
tax exempt. I'm
abated.
sorry. Thank you. Tax exempt.
Mhm.
So an educational institution can have a residential building tax exempt while they're charging prime rate for rents. Is that right?
I don't know what they charge to the existing tenants. I'm not sure, but it's I believe it's tax exempt based on who the entity is that owns it.
Right.
I don't know. I'd have to.
Okay, I'll ask the assessor. And the reason I ask that is because you have some non-for-profit organizations that own property, and some of it is MHDC 30-year, and the income is restricted, and only MHDC can increase it, and then the project fails. But they can't qualify for tax abatement. So that's something I've just learned today, and I will be looking more into, because we have some nonprofits over the past 17 years I've been alderman who projects has failed and they were not tax exempt, like universities. Jonathan, also it got a 5 out of 5 because it was tax exempt and now it's coming on a tax rolls. Was that factored into the equation on how it got a 5 out of 5?
It does factor in a little bit. So let me go back. So if you look at the project score piece, the one of the reasons a lot of projects don't quite make it to 5 out of 5 is because the increment score usually, which is that third piece, which is 2 possible points out of the total 40. Um, that that number is based on what the total new revenue is going to be to the city relative to what it is today, and it's based on a percentage basis. So the fact that the base was so extraordinarily low allowed that increment score to get the maximum amount of points possible, which gave it the 5 out of 5. But even without that, the other 2 components are based not on what the existing level is, but they're based on how much revenue is going to be generated relative to these 2 lines here, the neighborhood average and the sustainable target. And as you can see from the graph, even during the abatement period, it exceeds both of those numbers by a pretty large margin. And that's being driven primarily by, I mean, there is the new property tax that's coming in, but it's also being driven by the density of the number of residents on the site and the estimated new resident earnings tax that will be captured by those new residents.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the annual projected income for the first year?
Sure. Let me. I'm gonna flip over to my. I don't know if you guys see when I flip this, but I'm flipping over to the spreadsheet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So net new taxes. The first year is the project isn't fully completed, but it's 56,000, almost $700. It stabilizes by 2024 and it hits $159,000 of new taxes a year to the city.
Okay.
That's net new taxes.
And maybe this question is for the developer. So how much income will this project produce? Let's say year 2, understanding that, you know, you won't have a full year upon completion. That's the number I'm looking for.
It won't generate any revenue for approximately, so as we mentioned before, we have an agreement with the Jesuits. They're going to stay in place for 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then construction will be approximately 18 months. So in reality, we won't see any profit or revenue for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
While construction and goes on in planning. So it's it's quite a bit of a ways out, you know.
I understand that, but once it's completed, you know, the first year that it's occupied 100%, what is the revenue projected?
About $4 million.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. How much?
About $4 million, approximately.
About $4 million. Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Alderwoman.
before we go any further, I'd like to comment on the question about the ability for the building to not pay taxes. Most of the residents there do support the education system because they're teachers, they're counselors to the new Jesuits that are being trained to be a part of the education system. And that's why it could be tax abated, because it was supporting the educational institution.
I believe the assessor can provide us provide the alderman some additional information.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are some pretty strict rules regarding unrelated business income for tax exempt property for tax exempt organizations. In this case, the retired priests who are also affiliated with a religious order, and I think it probably more under that exemption.
That as well.
But I think the assessor would probably have more detailed knowledge on that.
I like the way you said strict, because I went through that with them, and they're parking garages and things like that. They have to pay taxes on, so it's interesting.
It's all whether or not the revenue that they make off the project is related to their charitable mission, and if it's if viewed as unrelated, then it's subject to tax. The interpretation of that, though, can get pretty complicated.
Yes, sir.
Alderwoman Hubbard, do you have any questions for the sponsor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just a few questions. So once the priest or whoever is there now, they're going to relocate, and so will they be coming back, or will this be just something separate that's open to all students or whoever else? Will they be coming back, or is it more, I guess, just market rate and whoever?
Yeah, so they're building a new facility. They said about, 75% of them are over 80 years old. So they're going to assisted care. Right now they only have it's 3 floors are equipped as basically as a assisted living facility. It's kind of like a hospital, but they don't have space to treat them. And then they're building a new facility. I believe it's in Delmar Gardens.
For half of them.
Yeah, for half of them. So that's their That's where they're building their new facility, and the rest are just going to, well, yeah.
Yeah, Alderman, actually, right, they half of the residents have already transferred out, that's why it's down to 80. They went to a assisted living facility in West County, and then over on Laclede, they're building a new facility in which the 80 that is left are going to move there. The property is not owned by the university. The property is owned by the Jesuit order, not the
Right.
university. But the occupants within the property are affiliated with the university and both the church, but it's not owned by the university. It's owned by the Jesuit order, by the Catholic Church.
Okay.
Yeah.
But after it's developed, then it will be open to anyone, or will it still be like a Jesuit
Yes.
facility?
No, it'd be open to anyone. Jesuits
Okay.
will be out 100%.
Okay. And so how many residential units would it be again?
It's somewhere between, right now, the minimum 132. We think we may be able to get as many as 169. The architects are still doing some additional design work on the building right now.
Okay. And all of them will be market rate, no subsidy or anything, all market rate units?
Exactly. And no subsidy from, except from the standpoint, most cases, is going to be student housing. Most of the
Okay.
students in the area are going to be occupied.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Kotar.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions were answered by previous.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the development team as part of your financing structure utilizing historic tax credits?
No.
No, we're not.
You're not. Okay, great. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you, Alderman.
And Alderwoman Boyd is absent today. If there are no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion on board bill number 217. Sure. Motion. I'm sorry, someone broke up, I think. Is there a motion?
That was me. So moved.
Okay, so the Alderwoman from the 5th has made a motion that we pass board bill number 217 out of the committee with the due pass recommendation. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by the Alderman from the 7th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd, Chairman Rhodey,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Boyd. 6 aye votes.
By your vote, you've sustained the motion of the Alderwoman from the 6th, and board bill number 217 is passed on the committee with a due pass recommendation. Congratulations, Alderwoman from the 19th. You got a lot of exciting activity going on.
I do. Thank you.
Next up, our director at SLDC has requested time on our agenda to share with us a presentation regarding their organizational structure. Mr. Director Williams, are you available?
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you very much. To the committee members and Mr. Chair, thank you for allowing me to present this morning. So the topic that I want to share with you is what we're currently thinking about as far as reorganization, but also I'll end the presentation by giving you a quick summary of some preliminary findings from what the impact of some of the incentives have been for calendar year 2020. And so let me start by saying that, in fact, if Matt, can you go to the first slide, please?
Can everybody see the slides? I've tried to share the screen.
Yes, yes, we can see it. If you can move to the next one, please, for me.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do today was to give you a quick review on where we've been, but also a look at what the implementation will be for one of the recommendations, which was to reorganize SLDC such that we could provide for better implementation of many of the recommendations that came out of the study. And so just by a way of summary, many of you are aware of the planning efforts that were conducted by Great Rivers Greenway for the Brick Line, which connects Fairgrounds Park back to the center along North Grand and down to Tower Grove Park, but also the connection between Forest Park and the Arch Ground. So that significant effort, and is still very much in play at this point with all of the community meetings, was one of the pillars of what we were looking at in our development of our plan. So the second one has been one that is currently in motion now, and a lot of discussion, a lot of feedback, is the STL 2030 vision, which is the regional plan, which is being overseen by Greater St. Louis, and as a result of the combination of a number of organizations. But within that plan, you can see a lot of what we have done with the economic development framework also come into play, as we participated, on a regular basis in that process and that development to get it to this point at this moment. The third one was the downtown STL plan that was recently approved by the Planning Commission. And the plans that are happening in our innovation community as we speak with both Cortex and T-Rex. So I bring this to you by saying that there's been lots of coordination amongst all of the plans that are being presented and in motion as we speak, to include the economic development framework that I'm sharing with you today. So this slide here just is a reminder that there was lots of participation points along the way, and the getting feedback and responses along the way. And so this is just a summary of that. So can we go to the next slide, please? Well, this is an eye chart. Matt, can you blow it up just a bit? But I think you all have, we sent you a copy of this, but this is a reminder of what the top 10, goals were for our study. And overall, as you know, we intentionally led this with equitable as a title, equitable economic development framework, such that we could have an intentional focus on areas where we have traditionally thought of being underserved. And most of that has been North St. Louis, but Southeast St. Louis, in pockets around Dutchtown and Cherokee, that area, as well as the area north of Delmar. And so that is and the rest of the city obviously is involved in as needs arise, but an intentional focus to try and make sure that we focus on the underserved. And so we have some goals here that I'm not going to go through each one of them, because the purpose today is not to go through that, but to talk a little bit about the reorganization of our efforts here at SLDC. So the next slide, please. Out of the framework, we realized that we ended up with three main categories, and both clusters, places, and opportunity to thrive. And essentially, there were 32 strategies that came out of the cluster consideration, 43 strategies out of places, and 15 strategies out of the opportunity to thrive. Next slide, please. Overall, there are 232 action items that the last slide did not capture, but 232 action items. And we have that in a spreadsheet that we are tracking as we are trying to work with a number of partners. The cluster focal points, though, include all these items that are listed here. And when I get to the organizational chart, you will see some of this reflected, some of these cluster focal points reflected in the organization that we are proposing. Next slide, please. Under the place and priorities, these are the areas that came out of it. We looked at the employment districts, the employment centers, and if you recall, when we briefed it to the board about 6 to 8 months ago, we shared with you all of the maps. And you can find this report online with all of the details that can be provided for all of the corridors, for all of the centers, and for all of the districts. Next slide, please. On the opportunity to thrive, this was a focus on population retention and growth, which is one of the key pieces of it. At some point, we have to stem the flow away from the city and be attractive to those that can occupy. And so we have, one of the things that we have an abundance of is real estate. And so we have to have a strategy to figure out how to repopulate that, either both for residential and for commercial. But there's also a focus on growing what I call the African-American middle class and trying to attract others back to the city as well. So we're looking at diverse entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial opportunities. And we're reaching out to best in class around the nation to try and understand how that is ongoing. So as part of our implementation, it's not just reorganization. It is looking at all of the other recommendations that would be best in class for us to emulate. Okay, next slide, please. So if I can, this is the wiring diagram. I think most of you know pretty much how we are currently organized, which is one executive director, but I have, there are 2 deputies. One is focused on major projects in real estate. The second is on commercial development and incentives. And so one of the recommendations that came out of this, and don't strain your eyes because I'm going to tear this apart so you can see it a little better up close and personal. But one of the recommendations that came out of this was that we should end up with a chief of staff to reduce the number of direct reports to the director, but also to have a better focus on number of areas that we're looking at. So on this chart, you see green, and that green is basically will be new employees that is not currently funded. So a part of the reason I'm sharing this is that we also need to have an up close and personal conversation about how do we fund economic development in the city of St. Louis, which we don't do it at all now from a general revenue perspective. We do provide work program opportunities through CDA, which is essentially the guts of what is provided from a city-sponsored agency. The remaining funding that comes to SLDC is through the real estate assets that we hold where fees are paid. We also charge fees for some of the incentive programs that we implement, but that's not unlike any other economic development agency anywhere else in the nation. So our fee structure is definitely in line with all of the others that are out there. And this is part of the review, if you will, by the state auditor when they came through as well. But let's go to the next slide and let me talk specifically about one of the big changes. We have created a group called Development and Growth Director. Development and Growth. And the director of that will have under it what I call geographic project managers. We don't currently have that at this point. And so this is having a focus, if you will, on specific neighborhoods with a project manager who is living and breathing this on an everyday basis. And this person will be the one that will interact on a daily basis also with the elected officials, as well as the neighborhood organizations that are out there. And so, Matt, if we could, well, before we leave the slide, right underneath that, you also see what I call the clusters. That cluster group are the ones that if you recall, I said that we needed to, one of the recommendations was that we needed to focus in on these clusters because they're the growth clusters, are the ones that we need to retain and grow or start and implement as a result of the recommendations. As we through that whole study, this is what surfaced as being the highlights of where we need to move. So our goal here would be to have a project manager, each of those blue buckets there, but we would also look at those functions that are currently as clusters and may have people assigned to that, or we may have one of the given, say the downtown person may also overlap into hospitality and tourism, just because that's where the predominant amount of the hospitality and tourism may be. But we haven't figured that one out yet based on the actual ability to implement. This is based on funding, but these are the areas where we will be moving. Okay, so if you go to the next slide for me. Next slide. Okay, so what would that project manager? I alluded to a number of things that person would be responsible for: establishing and maintaining relationships with area stakeholders, facilitating neighborhood outreach, neighborhood business retention and attraction, engaging with city departments to deploy city services as necessary. And so this is working with some of the groups that are already in place, like neighborhood stabilization and others that are out there. But this person from an economic development perspective is sort of coordinating a lot of effort in those areas. And I'll show you what the potential area might look like. Next slide, please. Additional things is identify target areas and key projects. The project management, in this case, symbol sites, get those in line. And this is, while the thing that we do now is more reactive, what we want to do is to be more proactive. And we want to be sure that we are doing that same thing out in North St. Louis, as sometimes we're accused of just doing only in the Central Corridor. So this is putting a person on the ground who will have the responsibility to do all these things that we're talking about. This is also talking about marketing and creating RFPs for neighborhood redevelopment areas. So this person is like the lead, but he will have a team behind him of many of the assets that we currently have. All right, next slide, please. Again, the person is really the primary point of contact for any project seeking SLDC assistance, manage and track the projects from initiation to completion, and work with the data team to track projects progress and report neighborhood matrix. So you can see that part of that is that person coming back in-house to work with people like Jonathan or Matt to make sure the financial analysis is done, that we touch base with PDA and others about planning, zoning, and that we work with our small business finance teams to make sure that we can bring resources. So these are the things that we're looking at for that group. Next slide, please. So like I said, we haven't locked in on an area, but we wanted to divide the city up by neighborhoods. And so the version on the left shows that we have more areas, more project managers that would be designated, but this depending upon resources, but roughly 3 areas north, 3 areas south, and area working along the riverfront. Okay, next slide, please. Well, we wanted to stop and go back because I think that while we're at this area, I'll ask if there are questions from the board about what you've seen thus far as the organization, because the major change was actually in that last group of slides that I just talked about.
I guess Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question about currently, and I appreciate where we're moving toward. I think it's a great idea, but I know I've been asking for a website that lists all the redevelopment areas that we currently have in place so that we can market those. And I'm just wondering, are we even doing that right now? Because I can't have confidence in, a plan moving forward if we're not doing some of the basics now.
We are, in fact, Alderman, thank you for asking. A number of changes are being made. We've hired data analysts. We are working to be more transparent. We're working with IT to be sure that we can bring a lot of what you're suggesting that we share with you, the public and others, that we have it available. So that is in process. I can assure you that working with Cindy and IT, that there are some things that are coming that where we'll be able to share more with you. Right now, and in the past, most everything that we had was like a spreadsheet or a file folder. And what we have done is to essentially work and create the database, and we're working to sort through how to display a lot of information. One of the concerns was once we pass an incentive, once the city provides an incentive, then how does it perform? And what we want to do is from passage to the lifetime of that should be able to show how that will impact or has impacted the city at a point in time. We aren't able to do that, but we're trying to work now to bring that to the table. But having where all of the areas are mapped, we can do that. We're very close to that.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Alderwoman Davis, any questions?
My question for the designation of the different areas that you have, but I think I just found the answer for the, because North St. Louis is going to be more difficult than some of the other areas, that purple section there. And so I saw where you said you could do 6 to 8 people, and they're definitely going to need the 8 in that area. So I think I answered my question, but can you explain to me how you make the decision about how many people will be hired for a designated area?
Well, it's not 6 to 8 in each area. What it will be is a project manager and what we have identified are 6 to 8 areas here. So on the slide on the left, you see 3 different neighborhood groupings, as well as the riverfront. So you have 4.
Okay.
Okay. Then you have the downtown piece there in the light green, but you also have the central corridor. In the south, you have 3 areas as well that we were looking at.
Okay. Well, then I do need to have that answer, because that purple area is really going to be difficult. And we have to have more staff there in order to get something done. And this plan kind of reminds me of how the structure was in the past. I don't know if Dale is online, but this is pretty much how it was structured in the beginning. And we had people who worked solely in one area, so they knew that area well. And if anybody wanted to develop in it, it would be the same person that would work in that area and have all the relationships. So I do like that instead of just waiting for somebody to come in. You're going to also be working on creating opportunities there. So that's good.
All right.
But I see now, you said 6 to 8 area project managers. So you could have 1 or 2 people in each one of those designated areas.
Yeah, I think that based on what we find in those areas and the ability to augment them with interns and with our own internal staff will be the way that we go. But the key is to form the relationships within the areas, to work with the community development organizations or neighborhood organizations and other stakeholders that are within those areas to be able to put together a strategy or plan to move forward.
Okay. All right. I think I understand it better now. Thank you.
Okay.
Alderwoman Hubbard, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I just have a few comments. The plan, it looks good on paper. It looks good in theory, and I trust that a lot of time has been put into it. But just me, myself personally, I just don't have a lot of faith in our processes, because for so long things have really navigated away from what the community wants, and the resources haven't been there. And administrations change, different goals change, and I don't want people coming in my ward just working only with one particular entity, because that's the entity that's making all of the noise. So I have some concerns about this. I'm always hopeful, and I hope as a city we'll move forward and start doing things right. But for so long we haven't been. So when you see these plans come about and it looks really good, I'm always kind of reluctant about it. So I just hope that we can do a better job. Otis, I know you've served the city a long time and have done it well. I trust that your office will be left in good hands when you leave. But just going forward, I just feel as older people, we need to be all over this. We need to be all included in it from every step of the way, because if we are not, then what will happen is what has continued to happen for so long, and we have one whole half of the city just with nothing. So I'm hopeful. I want to be engaged in the process, but I'm not super excited about it, because I know how things usually look on paper, and then I know how they end up when it comes to my community. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I just wanted just let me say, Alderwoman Hubbard, I appreciate your comments, but we are focused and dedicated to make sure that this is implemented, and I trust that my successor. I know that folks that are currently here are all dedicated to try and do that, and I think key will be communicating with this structure. We're going to be able to communicate better with you. When I say with you, with the aldermen. As well as the neighborhood, all of the neighborhood organizations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Kotar.
Otis, could you go back to the org chart slide? I just wanted to look at that one. Thanks.
The overall, go to the overall one, Matt.
Yeah, the bigger one. There it is. Thanks. I just wanted to look at this. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to take a closer look at this. Thank you.
Okay. What I will do once we get, I wanted to just have a question Q&A about that little section, but I will go through quickly the other parts of this so that you can see it as well. If that when questions are over here, we'll go quickly through the other parts of it.
Okay, well, and I guess I do have a question. So if we're talking about 6 to 8 sort of area project managers, I mean, are you looking at, I mean, so I know right now we have like I don't even know what you guys call that program. What used to be the facade program where we had these area, I don't know what those, you know, the district managers for, what do you call them? I'm sorry, I'm struggling.
They were commercial district managers.
Commercial district managers. So, I mean, are they, is sort of reorganizing that department part of this?
Yes.
At least I can work for my nails. They not even.
Sorry?
I'm not sure what is going on.
I can hear you, Otis. I don't know who that was.
Okay. Yes, the commercial district program will be integrated into this, and the features that we deploy through that program will be part of the assets that could be brought to the table by any one of these 6 or 8 project managers. Okay, so the one thing that we want to do is to find a different source of funding for that program. We've looked at the programs that were in Philadelphia, Detroit, Indianapolis, and a few others. And I don't believe we found anyone where the facade program was supported by HUD funds. And our problem with our program is that the funding is through HUD, which is one of those work programs that I talked about. So in other communities, the philanthropic community has come through, or either we there or the community allocated general funds for that, such that it wouldn't be quite so restricted. So what we want to do is to look at how we can develop programs like the facade program, but we still need some support for the personnel, and we'll be working with CDA and with HUD to talk about how that funding will be used.
All right, thank you. Nothing further.
Yeah. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Spencer, are you still on the call with us? Okay, we'll come back if we reconnect with Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Oldenburg, any questions?
No, none at this time. Thank you, Otis and SLDC.
Okay, that completes the members of the committee. I don't know if we have other people on the call.
Well, if you will, Mr. Chairman, just let me, because there may be other questions later, let me get back to.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted us to stop for questions, but.
Yeah, well, I did. But now that we've had those questions about that part of the organization, let me just complete the rest of the presentation, and then we can have the general discussion. So the second box that I wanted to talk to you about was creating a director of equity and inclusion. Right now, we do a great job on the compliance arm of this part of our organization, but we don't do very much with touching minority business directly to be able to do some of the things that you see that are below that block. And so we will intentionally focus on minority and women business with direct reach to that, and continue our work with and coordinating with Slate, but establishing mentorship program, employer consortiums, and the big key here though is trying to figure out how to provide capital to minority businesses. Okay, go to the next slide. The next one is our real estate development arm. Again, you'll see where we have a green box here that speaks to the ability to acquire real estate and assemble tracts of land, if you will, for redevelopment. While we own a lot of property, most of it is not contiguous, and so it's not ready for redevelopment. So we need to figure out how to get a fund that will allow us to buy strategically in key areas to be able to use the properties that we hold along with those properties that we don't hold to create that opportunity. So that is what we're looking at. And so this is reflective pretty much of what we have here, but you see a column there called city building. This is where we need to intentionally focus on with the groups in the city or the departments in the city that are looking at housing, such that we can integrate that into our overall economic development process and concept. And also looking at housing from a private sector perspective. So city building will be key. And you can see that we will continue to work and coordinate with PDA, CDA, Affordable Housing Commission, and others. Okay, next slide, please. This is our internal support, so we'll continue with that, but these are the folks that, as you know, we are separate from civil service, so we do have some internal, I call it housekeepers that keep us going. Next slide, please. And so this one is our incentives director, and this is where we have our business assistance center that is currently located on the 4th floor of City Hall, and does a yeoman's job of assisting walk-in customers and businesses. The strategic financial incentive analysis department, essentially we're adding an incentive PM, but also part of what we want to do is to be more transparent, which we talked about earlier. We then have a group that is just data, and that is understanding the impact and being able to provide the reports and to be transparent online with all the data that we currently have. And we need a person to make sure that we implement all those 232 actions that we have that were identified, somebody to keep track and to report, because we have a requirement, an annual requirement that this committee asks us to provide on an annual basis. And so part of that is will be that responsibility. And we will continue to work through on our new markets tax credit program, which has been sort of a yeoman's call. Thus far, we've had over $450 million of tax credits awarded to us. Next slide, please. Next slide. So what I wanted to do was to go directly, pretty quickly here to look at the impact from the SLDC boards, and these always end up with actions by the HUD's committee. But through all of the SLDC boards, I'm talking PIEA, LCRA, our TIF commission, those are the key incentive boards. But last calendar year, 58 projects were approved. Proposed jobs you see as far as residential units, the commercial square feet, and these are the things that when we approve those, these are the projections that were provided. So the next slide is showing you the same information, but without Iron Hill TIF and without the MLS Stadium, which is what skewed that number. So you can see in the calendar year of what that summary is. The next slide, please. And this is the incentive projects by ward. So you can see where those projects that were approved by SLDC and which wards they were. I think in a future presentation, we will share with you the last couple of years, because we did this last year for you as well, and we can then compare this year with last year. Next slide, please. So the incentive projects by use or type, you can see that residential, a little over $107 million. And this includes the Iron Hill TIF and also the MLS Stadium. Incentive projects by scope, the number of new projects versus rehab, and then incentive projects by incentive type. Only 2 TIF projects. I know without showing you this, most folks would say that we had more than 2, but we only had 2. But these are the, this is the breakout of those. Next slide, please. And just a quick flash of all of our building permits. And we've done this by year since 2017. So this is 2017. Next slide. Putting 2017 and 2018 together, then adding 19. You can see the continued action, and then 2020. But I want to show you specifically just 2020. This is 2020. Even during COVID year, there was, and I think you've seen a separate report from the building division, because this is something, this is Frank's data from the building division. This is what 2020 actually looked like. Next slide, please. That may be the last one. But Mr. Chair, I just wanted to share that as information for the committee. And the whole purpose was to inform you, because I do think that there needs to be a continued discussion amongst the elected officials about how to fund economic development in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Director. I agree with you. We have been criticized, and I can't, these last couple exhibits, where we were at a few years ago to where we are today, the progress of, the data collection and analysis and thoughtfulness and how we use the incentives is, improved dramatically. But, I think there's still plenty of opportunity out there. I liken it to buying things on a credit card. I mean, if you can pay cash, as our city becomes more attractive, and frankly, if we spend more money, priming the pump on things like, organizing SLDC in such a way that, I think that enhances our value proposition, reduces the needs for the incentives, and, will pay for itself relatively quickly. But enough of my thoughts. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions or comments before we close the meeting out today? Alderman Boyd? Okay. Alderwoman Davis, do you have any questions or comments?
Just a brief comment, Mr. Chairman. I do want to say thank you for this data, and I'm hoping that at some point we can have a joint opportunity with the school board and superintendent. I think that a lot of the members are new to the understanding and process of incentives, and if we could all help each other with better understanding, and also know, have clarity on what actually has taken place, it would be helpful for both of us as far as entities are concerned. And so I'd like to see that we go in that direction soon. Thank you.
Hey, Alderwoman Hubbard, any final thoughts?
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer. Okay, Alderman Oldenburg. Okay, did I miss Alderman Coder?
That's okay, Chairman. I look forward. I'm going to review the slides when Otis sends them out, and we'll follow up with any questions.
Okay, we have several people on the call that are, other people that are on the call that are not members of the committee. If you'd like to raise your hand, we can recognize you. I don't see anybody with their hand up. Okay, so I guess that concludes today's agenda items. Otis, if you could, I was hoping perhaps after the meeting, if you have a couple minutes, that we could talk kind of on a related topic. Are you still there, Otis?
I am. I'll be happy to. So if you
call you or vice versa, but just wanted to
yes.
get your thoughts.
Call me at your convenience. I'll be happy.
I'll call you right after we finish up here then.
Yeah, can I just comment to Alderwoman Davis's comment? We should have that discussion about incentives and the impact, and I call it the misinformation that that is perpetrated out there about the impact. And so you're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman, that we have made yeoman strides in understanding and analyzing the data that we're provided by our developers, but also we know pretty much the, I call it the impact to the city, but also to the developer. And for the most part, most of the assumptions about I call it the negative assumptions about the impact of incentives is that development would occur without the incentive. If the development would occur without the incentive, you're absolutely right. We would be, I call it negligent in our responsibility. But I submit that in many cases, the impact that on a positive side to the city far outweighs some of the comments that have been made. But we'd be happy to host that discussion, have I call it back and forth, and have a full understanding of the incentive process and its impacts.
Thank you. All right, if there is no other order of business for us today, then we'll consider today's meeting as completed and adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Chairman. Is this your last meeting, Chairman, as chair?
This is my last meeting, so.
Well, thank you for your leadership and for all you've done for the committee.
Well, thank you. I really had a great time the last couple of years. And, it's been great working with Otis and his staff and our committee members. It's been a real enjoyable experience, and I feel like we really made a big difference in the city. So
I would like to echo that and share my appreciation for your leadership, Mr. Chairman. And again, for Otis' leadership at SLDC. You know, I know it has not been easy. You know, being involved with politics, Otis, is certainly not like being a colonel in the military, is it?
No.
I almost want to ask you which one is worse, but I won't. And certainly I respect, you know, there are times where public servants are put in positions where their hands are tied. And of course, they can't always tell us that their hands are tied. All they can do is try to stay out of the line of fire. And it's a difficult balance. I certainly hope whoever replaces you can, you know, walk that tightrope as you have professionally walked it. City of St. Louis is certainly moving into some really tough times with COVID and resources continuing to diminish. And so, again, Otis, just thank you for all your leadership over at SLDC and for always being willing to work with me and being open and honest. I mean, it's rarely that we disagree, but when we did, we were man enough to apologize and say, hey, look, you know, didn't we mean that, and move on. So I've always maintained nothing short of a professional relationship with you.
Got a problem.
it looks like we lost the Alderman from the 22nd.
We did. Mr. Chairman, I cannot let you go without sharing with you that you really brought a nuance to this committee. And I call you Professor Rhodey, in case you don't know that, because we have been in school and I love it. And we've done a lot as far as improving the system and also understanding it better and prayerfully giving a better understanding to the public, even though there's been some strong efforts for misinformation. But I'm okay with that because I'm out there, I'm talking to people every day, and I help educate them on the truth. And so I thank you so much for the accomplishments that we made. And Otis, I know you and your team, you have been working overtime, and we have a lot of good things that could happen if we didn't get caught up with politics. So I know you're looking forward to your retirement. And thank you.
If I can just interject, and everything has been, I have enjoyed working with the committee and with all of the elected officials. As someone said, we may have had a tit or tat here and there, but it's always been very professional. And so I've always appreciated that. And so, but also, if I have a moment just to say thank you to my staff, because they are the ones that you see most often without me. And they've done a yeoman's job. They are the ones that are making the improvements. I can say, let's do this, and they will go out and get it done. So hats off to the whole SLDC team, because they're a great group of employees, and they'll be here. So yeah, I'll go away, but that group of young men and women will be here, and they'll keep us going.
I agree.
Thank you, Alderman, Alderwoman. You've been a great neighbor as well. Can't tell you what a pleasure it is to go to a neighborhood association meeting and have your neighboring alder person, having a cooperative relationship and one of mutual respect. And it's been great working with you all four.
Thank you.
All right. Well, enough of this. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you all on Friday, I guess. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.